It's not a secret that the gaming industry is on its way out. The big multi-billionaire CEOs who cry over losing pennies each year are the ones killing it. You've got EA making statements like, you gotta cut the bridge when you realize you can't make money on something in relation to linear games. Companies like Microsoft pricing people out so that they get enticed into paying for Game Pass, devaluing games and cannibalizing sales. There's Sony, who has this current weird obsession with live service games that has been eating into their single player development. There's just so many stories about a game's development being a linear focused story driven game, and the higher ups come along and beat the developers into submission and get them to add ways to monetize through microtransactions. I don't really like the narrative that gets spread saying that developers are incompetent or ruining games on purpose. Does it happen? Yeah, possibly, but with the sheer amount of horror stories available to read right now of suits pushing for this poison in games, I don't know how anyone can sit there and say that the collapse of the games industry bubble is caused by developers. Saying that, what happens when you take 3 ex-Ubisoft seniors and 30 or so junior developers with a vision? You get Clair Obscur Expedition 33. This game feels like an anomaly, but in the best way possible. We currently live in an era of gaming where, for some reason, the expectation is for every game to push boundaries of what's possible with gaming as a medium, and it honestly sucks. Of course there's room for games to actually push boundaries and innovate, but not every game explicitly needs to do this. I think Expedition 33 is a perfect example of this. As you push through the game, you'll notice a lot of the game's systems and mechanics are just taken from other games. The QTEs when you use a skill, that's influenced by games like the Mario and Luigi RPG series, Lost Odyssey and Shadow Hearts. I think the QTEs are a tad basic, but they're serviceable. They're fine. Again, games don't need to reinvent the wheel to be good. Just take existing good mechanics and refine them. The Lumina system is very reminiscent of the ability system from Kingdom Hearts. You can turn abilities on and off, and it can lead to some really cool and interesting theory crafting. For example, a basic setup I put on all my characters is auto shell and powerful on shell. So on combat start, shell gets automatically applied, which triggers applying powerful. You can take this even further by equipping greater powerful, which takes powerful's 25% increased damage buff and slaps another 15% on top of that for a total of 40% increase. And if you think you're just a little bit too slow in combat, you can equip Rush on Powerful, which, just like Shell and Powerful, applies Rush to the character. This is just a brief explanation of what you can do with the Lumina system, but with 193 total Pictos, there is a lot of variety and option for build crafting. I never really min-max too much. I just equip stuff that buffed my damage, including ones that increased the damage I took, and I just bashed my head against the wall until I won. Perfectly viable strategy. I'm very happy they let me do that. Speaking of combat, this game differs from a majority of traditional turn-based games. It is a lot more active in its mechanics, and that's because of its parry and dodge mechanics. The game is very much parry or die. You can dodge too. It's a little bit more forgiving than parry, but parrying is far more beneficial because if you parry every attack in a combo, you are rewarded with a counter attack, which, by the way, completely viable build. There are many Pictos that increase your counter attack damage or give various buffs on counter attack. Mael actually has a weapon with a passive that puts her in virtuo stance on successful counterattack, which is just a free 200% damage. Speaking of Mael stances, every character has a unique mechanic attributed to them. Mael has her various stances that she can go into using specific skills. Lune has her elemental stains, which can be generated through various skills. Fire skills generate fire stains, for example. She can then consume certain stains to make other skills stronger. Gustav has overcharge. The more you use skills, the more you build up charge for his arm. Once you hit 10 charges, you can nuke the enemy. Every party member is unique. They're simple, but it helps to fight against endgame encounters become homogeneous, like in, say, Final Fantasy X, for example. You max out everyone's sphere grid in that game to do all the Dark Aeons and penance, and they just become quick hit spammers until overdrive is full and overdrive is used. In my opinion, this is how a lot of JRPGs end up being, and I'm very glad that Expedition 33 has switched up the formula. The other option you have in combat is free aim. This allows you to hit weak points and just in general deal damage. And once again, this is a viable build because there are pictos and weapons to support that playstyle. You can apply mark on shot. You can make free aim shots ignore shields. First free aim shot deals 200% damage. 20% chance to gain AP on free aim shot, essentially making that shot free if you hit that proc. Speaking of AP, I cannot express how much I love this system. There is no MP or resource management outside of battle. Something that really annoyed me about Metaphor Refantasio last year was managing the MP of my party. I spent an ungodly amount of time in each dungeon trying to find groups of enemies close to safe rooms so that I could use the mage archetype to kill enemies to regen my MP. Even outside of that, MP and resource management can get pretty tedious in most games. Having to buy MP restoration items, using them in combat and wasting a turn, outside of combat having to go to an inn to rest, it's just annoying. In Expedition 33, AP is your MP, and no matter what you do, your AP is entirely dependent on your pictos. Energizing start, energizing turn, the chance to get AP on free aim shot I mentioned earlier. There are so many ways to start battle and generate AP during battle, and you're not punished for using any of it. In my opinion, this helped with the overall pace of the game. Just keep moving forward, which is also kind of the theme of the story, which I'll get to in a bit. Every enemy you fight is unique, and they all have multiple attacks you have to learn. I think one negative to this combat system is that in some rare cases, the camera angle makes it really hard to see enemy attacks, and so parrying the attack becomes pretty difficult. I remember one instance of one of my party members getting attacked, but Monoko was on the far right, and because he's so big, he covered the screen hiding the attacks. Outside of those rare cases, absolutely incredible combat system. One thing that really sticks out to me is the game's locations. They are insanely beautiful. I'm usually somewhat against realistic looks to games. I think that a lot of them age pretty poorly, and artists don't really do much with it to differentiate from other realistic games. But when developers take that realism, add an art style, be creative in the design of the environment, it can seriously go a very long way. No matter where you go, you will always have the monolith towering over you and gazing at you. It's kind of horrific and beautiful. Not only is the monolith there for a narrative reminder, it also kind of functions as a compass. There were quite a few times while exploring where I was presented with 2 or more paths, and pretty much every single time, choosing the path that didn't go directly towards the monolith was an optional area, which is something I love. Way too many modern games handhold you through exploration, and I get it. The average modern gamer is genuinely brain dead, but if developers were to design their levels so that the environment guides the player, we could eliminate the evil that is minimaps and quest markers. Throughout this video, you may have noticed the game having an overworld, similar to what you would find in old Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest. This is probably my favourite aspect of the game's exploration. I think having the world look like a diorama really helps locations and points of interest stand out. It also probably significantly cut down on the game's budget and development time. Imagine having to create an entire full-size world in between all these major areas. Having an overworld doesn't detract from the story because the story takes place entirely in these areas that are fully sized anyway. Which, speaking of, it's time to talk about the story. I'm a bit wary of talking about this too much. Anything after the end of Act 1 is just a minefield of spoilers. But that doesn't mean I'll just avoid it. I love this game's story. I think I would put it quite close to Final Fantasy X, which I consider to be one of the greatest games ever made and stories told. There are so many moving parts to this game's story, so many mysteries that unravel as you progress. It feels like such a long time since I've played a game in modern times where you can tell that the writing is backed by confidence. There's no pussyfooting around. There's no, should we or shouldn't we do this twist? Should we commit? Should we not? These guys have written a story and fully committed to what they have created. It's really commendable in an era of gaming where game stories have to leave room for sequels just in case they become mega hits. which doesn't matter here because there is no sequel bait. Going through this story leaves you full. Are there parts of the story I would like the devs to go a bit deeper on? Of course. But if Clair Obscur 2 ever becomes a thing and they decide to make this an anthology series like Final Fantasy, I wouldn't complain at all. The story feels complete. Again, not going to say too much, but the game does have 2 endings that you can pick from, and they're both pretty definitive. One more than the other, but both are still good. I think it also helps that the story is very contained. There isn't 5+ groups to keep track of. There isn't the politics of other countries looming over the main party. It's just the expedition and the antagonists. As you push into Act 2, you start to get optional relationship quests at the camp. These give more insight into each party member's life. For example, when you first meet Monoko, he forces the party to fight a stalact that he seems very reluctant to go near it. Just off this, you can put 2 and 2 together that maybe something bad happened to Monoko in the past. If you progress his relationship enough, I can't remember the specific relationship level, but he will make an offhand comment about a stalact beating him senseless in the past. And he doesn't say it in the tone of, oh, by the way, the reason I don't like stalacts is because of blah 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 blah. It is literally an offhand comment about his many fights through the years, and you have to connect the dots yourself. Each party member has scenes like this, where they'll mention something during the main story, and then during the relationship cutscenes or just general optional scenes at camp, they'll either directly or indirectly give additional context. I honestly love this. It exudes confidence and trust that the player is able to pick up on subtleties during cutscenes. Expedition 33 is a triumph in an era of ballooning budgets and higher-ups interfering in development to maximize profits. It has absolutely destroyed every single narrative that these slimy CEOs keep spewing. I kind of worry that they will learn the wrong lessons from this game. The lesson they should learn is to let developers cook and let them have confidence in the product they are making. But, knowing publishers and CEOs, they'll see the success of this game and start whipping developers to start making a realistic turn-based RPG with wiggle room for $40 skins and battle passes. It's been a while since I reviewed a game on this channel. If this is your first time watching, I don't give scores, I give recommendations. So what is my recommendation for Expedition 33? It's simple. You should buy this game right now. I know I gave Baldur's Gate 3 my game of the generation, but I think Expedition 33 is going to be even more influential. Deep down, I think this is going to be this generation's Last of Us. Will better games release? Yeah, probably. But in 4 to 5 years, I reckon there'll be a few copycats released and even more announced. I also hope this influences how games are developed in general. As I was writing this review, footage of the game from 5 years ago surfaced online. This was used to attract voice actors to the project, and throughout this smaller trailer you can see remnants of the final game. It just goes to show that if you're confident and passionate in what you are creating, it'll come out great. Confidence in your product and developers does wonders for game quality. With all that said, once again, I strongly recommend this game. Please buy it, and thank you for watching.